This is GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW. Written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. This is flyer number 137, entitled "The core MGTOW/masculist problem is not the Fluffie Feminists, but the Jewish banksters." Flyer itself. The core problem of MGTOW/masculism is not Fluffie Feminists, but Jewish banksters. The more I study the massive crimes against humanity committed by Jewish banksters, the more I hate them for what they've done and intend to do, and the more I realize that the greatest enemy of the MGTOW/masculists is not the Fluffies and Fluffie Feminists, but the hated Jewish bankster Frankist Satanists. These Jewish bankster Frankist Satanists hate us and plan to wipe us out once they have become the rulers of the world in what is usually called the New World Order, NWO. I will give a bit of background to their history and their beliefs, and then explain why I think they are MGTOW/masculists' greatest enemy. Jews invented one of the vilest of religions, called Judaism, that teaches religious Jews to hate everyone, that is, the Goy, that is, non-Jews, with the word Goy having connotations of cattle. Their major religious set of documents, the Talmud, is full of expressions of vitriolic hatred against the Goy. You can find many YouTube videos with quotes of this anti-Goyism that readily explains why the Jews have been thrown out over 100 times from nearly every country in Europe over the past 1,000 years. The Jews are history's most interculturally incompetent and most hated people. They seem incapable of learning the simple lesson that if your religion teaches you to hate everyone, then everyone will hate you back. That is, Jewish anti-Goyism generates anti-Semitism wherever they go. Typically, a Jewish community would settle in some new area, some new country, and a half century to a century later they'd be thrown out. This has happened with boring repetition. The religious Jews believe that one day they will be saved by a Jewish Messiah, a warrior figure who will conquer the Goy, rule over them with his capital in Jerusalem, and then proceed to wipe out the Goy, so that the Jews can have the earth for themselves. This Jewish prophecy appears many times in the Jewish Bible, the Torah, the Talmud, and their mystical text, the Kabbalah. In the 1600s, a Turkish Jew who was bipolar, so manic depressive, thought he was the Jewish Messiah, and half of Jewry believed him, that is, 1 million Jews. His name was Shabbatai Tzvi, that's T-Z-V-I, well, different spellings. He went to the Sultan of the Persian Empire and asked for Palestine to be given to the Jews, so that the Jews could return to their homeland that they lost to the Romans nearly 2,000 years earlier. 1 million energized Jews were a political threat to the Sultan, so he made Tzvi an offer he could not refuse. Quote, "Convert to Islam or lose your head in the next few moments." End quote. Tzvi converted to Islam. Most of his followers abandoned him in disgust, but some still believed he was the Jewish Messiah, who merely pretended to be an Islamist, but underneath was Jewish, hence the concept of the crypto-Jew, that e.g. the Rockefellers a century ago. Tzvi, a charismatic rabbi, turned Judaism on its head. He preached that what was traditionally seen as good and evil were both the creations of the Jewish God, his left hand, evil, and his right hand, good. Traditional Judaism said that the Jewish Messiah will come when the world is either wholly good or wholly bad. Tzvi argued that it's easier to create a world that is wholly bad than wholly good, so he preached for Jews to be bad, very bad. He effectively reversed the 10 Commandments. So, thou shalt murder, thou shalt commit adultery, etc. He encouraged Jews to have wife-swapping parties and huge orgies, etc. He was massively popular. A century later, Jacob Frank, a Shabbatian, that is, follower of Tzvi's ideas, also thought that he was the Jewish Messiah, and organized other Shabbatian Jews to infiltrate the religions and organizations of non-Jews, to undermine them. He converted Mayer Amschel Bauer, later Rothschild, the father of the 5 sons who became the Rothschild financial dynasty. Rothschild later made him rich and was inspired by Frank. It was Rothschild who conceived the idea how to fulfill the Talmudic prophecy of ruling the earth with its capital in Jerusalem and later to wipe out the Goy. His essential idea was to take control of the issuance of the money of a country and hence control its government. He hired Weishaupt to write the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, which was a fairly detailed step-by-step blueprint on how the Talmudic prophecy could be fulfilled. Rothschild, or Rothschild in German, Weishaupt and Frank all lived in the same city, Frankfurt, in Germany at the time, that is the later 1700s. Weishaupt was funded by Rothschild, or Rothschild, Red Shield in German, to found the Illuminati, a secret organization whose final aim was to rule the world from Jerusalem by a Rothschild or Rothschild descendant, who would be the Jewish Messiah, and who would then wipe out the Goy, all according to the ancient Judaic teachings. Weishaupt was an organizational genius who recruited many other able devil-worshipping, that is Shabbatian, Frankist, followers, and started plotting the overthrow of the Goy, starting with the French Revolution. They bribed key people at key times and helped inflame hatred of the French monarchy. They caused food shortages in Paris by manipulating food markets, etc. They played a major role in the creation of the French Revolution. The Illuminati were discovered by the Bavarian government, so they fled to the UK and took over the Freemasons, adding levels above 32 to be Frankist Satanists, to provide cover for their Satanist plans, to rule the earth with its capital in Jerusalem, and then to wipe out the Goy. The Illuminati have been incredibly successful. They played a major role in the engineering of the two world wars. They obtained Palestine from the Brits as a result of World War I, taken from the Persian Empire, which fell during World War I. In World War II, they wiped out Japan and Germany, two major economic powers, and are now working on the destruction of the US, plus Europe and Japan again, by killing them with debt. The principal tool used by the Illuminati, that is the Rothschilds and their cronies, is to take control of the central bank of a country and install a paper currency, debt note, Ponzi scheme, in which only the Jewish bankster controls central bank can issue money to its people. Issuing money costs them virtually nothing, but the government has to pay back the central bank this money, created out of thin air, plus interest. But where does the money come from to pay the interest? From new loans by the government from the central bank. So these Jewish banksters have set up a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme, that makes debt slaves of its citizens and destroys the economy and the country. This is what is happening today in the US, Europe and Japan, three of the major powers. Whether the Jewish banksters have already taken control of central banks of Russia and China, I'm still unsure about. And I'm still unsure. No questions, mixed opinions, arguments either way. Anyway, the Jews are a tiny minority of the peoples of the earth. That is about 0.2%. So if they are to rule the world, they have to do it indirectly. They have to use the muscle and money of other peoples. To do this, they take control of the media, of education, of the minds of the people they control, etc. All these steps are spelt out in fair detail in the infamous protocols mentioned above. Another strategy these Illuminati Jewish banksters use to undermine the power of the people they aim to conquer is to divide and conquer, by playing off disputes between groups within the people, e.g. in the US, between whites and blacks. The US NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, in other words Blacks Lib, was founded and funded by Jewish banksters and their cronies, and between men and women, with their funding of feminism in the 60s. For example, the crypto-Jewish Rockefeller Foundation funded Gloria Steinem's Ms. magazine. Since the Jewish banksters have control of the issuance of money in the US, they can print as much as they want out of thin air to bribe the politicians to force them to do what the Jewish banksters want. Some of these politicians were gender politicians who had responsibility for creating the divorce laws of the 1970s that were so massively unjust to men, causing women to readily divorce their husbands and force him to lose his kids to her, his house to her, to pay child support and alimony. This massive gender injustice against men has caused the rise of MGTOW, men going their own way. 70% of young men under 35 in the US and Japan now refuse to marry and have kids, spending their money on themselves and thus wiping out the population. That is, the Goy population, playing right into the plans of the Jewish bankster Illuminati. Thus feminism and MGTOW are merely puppets of the Jewish banksters, manipulated to reject having kids and thus killing off the Goy, a very cheap and ingenious method, you have to admit. These Jewish banksters are evil genii. One thing that the Jews did right over many centuries was to encourage their smartest members, the rabbis, to have lots of kids. At the same time, the Catholic Church imposed celibacy on its smartest members, the priests and cardinals, so as to keep the wealth of the church within the church and not have it frittered away by inheritance to wives. As a result, there are many Jewish genii with IQs over 170. Jews have won 40% of the Science Nobel Prizes. Their intellectual superiority can be used to benefit mankind, for example, the Nobel and Abel Prizes, or for evil, e.g. the Jewish banksters, who manipulate their stupid Goy to enslave them and later to wipe them out. So, to come to the punchline of this flyer, the MGTOW/Masculists' greatest enemy is not the Fluffie Feminists. They are stupid Goy too, and are manipulated, outsmarted by the Jewish banksters and their cronies just as much. These hated Jewish bankster Frankist Satanists will not allow men to have menfair gender laws, because that would go against their strategy of divide and conquer. They want internal strife, to distract the sheeple from the Jewish bankster hidden agenda, and to weaken the strength and solidarity of the Goy majority. The only way for MGTOW/Masculists to get gender justice is to get rid of the Jewish banksters, by generating a massive hatred against them for destroying their country, by wiping out the middle class, by sending America's manufacturing capacity to China, etc., and making debt slaves of Americans for over a century, since the takeover of the Fed, which is the creation of the Fed, which is basically a private Jewish bank. These Jewish banksters and their cronies, for example, the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, which is today 80% Jewish, and is the real, in brackets, shadow government of the US, are only a few hundred. So all we need to do is spread information to the millions about their massive crimes against humanity, their debt slavery, their engineering of world wars, their creation of economic depressions, their murder of 6 US presidents, 4 successfully, 2 almost, their inflation of the currency that destroy people's savings, their control of the media, Hollywood, publishing, etc. It's a long list of horrific crimes. There's currently a war going on between the rise of awareness by the masses of the massive crimes committed against humanity by the Jewish banksters, and the desire of the Jewish banksters to censor the internet before an American Holocaust comes, and the Jewish elite, especially the Jewish banksters, are sent to The Hague and executed for their massive crimes against humanity. The US, Europe and Japan are about to be destroyed by these Jewish bankster Frankist Satanists. The Goy population, which includes MGTOW/Masculists, needs to raise the alarm and to educate people about humanity's greatest evil, that is the Frankist Satanist ideas/prophecy/agenda of the Jewish banksters. These Jewish bankster Frankist Satanist vermin need to be taken out, so we Goy can be free again before they take us out. Don't forget, they hate us. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name de GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers.